You're listening to DruidCast, episode 179.
All around me, surrounded, I am my own worst enemy. I conjure the moon and the sun. Life, now that I have begun, now that I have begun, on the moon and the sun, now that I have begun, all the stars in the sky right before my eyes, right before my my spirit start to grow. I conjure this path before me. Master of my fate and destiny. Destiny, on the moon and the sun, of my fate and destiny, all the stars in the sky.
It is officially spring. Hello, my friends, and welcome to DruidCast episode 179. I am your host, Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of the month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about membership to the Order and our courses, you can do that on our website, which is at www.druidry.org. Happy Alban Eilir if you are here in the Northern Hemisphere, and a blessed Alban Elved to all of our friends down under. Man, the sun is shining, the blackthorn is in full blossom, there is cherry blossom out, the hawthorn is opening their fresh green leaves, and there is that fresh spring smell in the air today that just lifts my heart with joy. Winter has gone away, and this particular lizard and sun worshipper just could not be happier that spring has arrived. And what a fantastic opening to the show as well. You heard my Canadian buddy Mojo playing his brand new single Before My Eyes, and what an amazing song. I love it. Mojo hosts the Wiggly and Way podcast with his partner Sparrow, and if you've been following that podcast, you will know what a journey Moj has been on. My friend, if you are listening to this, I remember you talking about how much music meant to you all those years ago at the Sunwheel Festival in Alberta, and you have absolutely nailed it. What a track. I know there are more to come, so do follow Mojo to hear more of these songs as they are released, and as ever, you will find links to all of the artists featured on DruidCast in the show notes. This month's Talky Bit is an interview with Penny Billington. She is the editor of the Order's monthly journal Touchstone, a published Llewellyn author, and someone who has been walking this Druid forest for decades. So grab a cuppa and enjoy this interview with Penny Billington.
The Talky Bit.
Okay, well, here I am on Zoom with Penny Billington. Now, we go back decades now.
Yeah, several, yeah.
You're very well known in the Order as the editor of the Order's journal Touchstone. But I'd like to get to know you a bit more over the course of this interview. We first met at the Sussex Lunacy Camp in 1995, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that was when I met you, and I heard Arthur's singing voice belting across the field, right? But you were already involved in the Order at that point. So take me back and let me know what led you to join OBOD in the first place.
Well, I want to say, first of all, that Arthur should never have been there.
Oh.
I was, he took me down in a camper van with a young child, and it wasn't his thing at all. So he was going to make sure you weren't all weird, and then leave me there and go walking the Ridgeway for 10 days. And he saw someone sitting with a guitar by the central fire, and he just didn't move off the field for 10 days. So that's Arthur's story. Now,
wow.
Back to my, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So he obviously thought we were weird then, so he had to stay with you. Is that what it was?
Yeah, he thought you were his sort of weird, and he was quite right, of course.
Too right.
So, but I mean, it's really interesting question to ask anyone. Where did this idea of, a search for spirituality ever come from in the first place? I mean, it should be the spiritual instinct when we have everything we need in a wealthy world that we're privileged to live in, our part of the world. You think our spiritual instincts would wither up like our appendix. The fact that they don't means they're vitally and eternally important. And I felt this as a young child, early on. And the only expression for religious feeling was the Church of England, where I loved the bells and the smells and the men in dresses, just adored those. And then when I got older, I realized I didn't agree with anything they were actually saying. So that was a problem. But sitting
it doesn't help that.
No, but sitting in an incense-filled church is a sort of mystical experience in itself. So that was the expression of that. But the love of nature, the only expression for that, for the sort of little girl I was being a girl guide. because then you could go. So I used to live to go camping once a year and to light fires and do all that sort of stuff. And so I had my childhood doing those things. But there's something else as well, which I hope the next generations don't feel so keenly, which is in a British working class household in those times, I won't specify the decade, there wasn't much interest shown. You just got on with living, got on with being nurtured and being loved and all that. But the need, some people have this deeper need for acceptance and on a deeper level. And while I love all my family, I didn't feel I had the understanding from them that perhaps would have nurtured my soul. You see what I mean? And that's no reflection on anyone. I know that we probably make a contract to be born before we are, but it'd be really interesting to go back and read it when we begin to wonder what the hell it was all about. So I've got this theory that it's not contented people that have experienced this need to spiritually search. It's people who felt a lack. Maybe the lack is just being born. Maybe we all just want to be floating in that sea of spiritual wonder. Though I don't actually agree with that, because I'm a Druid. And I love, I came to Druidry because I love the celebration of embodied spirituality on this earth.
So were you quite a religious child then at the beginning? Did you enjoy those church ceremonies for a while? And
I enjoyed basking in the ambience. I think a lot of children go through I had to be dragged to church like any normal child. There's no question of that. And there was no option of staying away. I mean, if you went, that was not an issue. But when you get to sort of the very early teens, I think a lot of children get into a questing, wondering, searching sort of thing, and they're looking around. I mean, I think loads of kids these days probably buy their first little teenage witch books when they're 13 or 14, because everyone feels the urge at that point. And that's when I would, because if it's high church, I would just sit and just drift along in this ambience of otherness. And also, you've got to remember, we didn't have the that Bible, what's it called? The New English Bible. There wasn't any of that. It was all King James. It was all weird words which flowed with poetry and mystery. You didn't quite understand them, whereas nowadays it's just like reading the gas bill, I think. I don't want to offend any Christians who like them. That's fine. It's not my thing to engage with mystery using the tools of the everyday. That's why I love the Druid ceremonies so much. We have a way of expressing things, every presence is a blessing. We breathe light and life into this circle. Those are magical statements to me.
Poetic. Yeah. So you had an amazing interest in the earth, and that was expressed through being in the guides.
Yep.
How did that then lead further on from there? What was the journey from that to sending off for a OBOD pack?
Then we'll gloss over this area that most people would like to remain in the dark in their own point, which is called puberty and hormones and all that all that stuff comes in and swamps anything else, and, So we got through that, went to college, stuff like that, and then what I started looking for, I suppose it was embodied spirituality, because I went looking for exercise systems. So I tried Tai Chi and I tried yoga, and I always liked the meditative parts of these more than the exercises, because I'm a speedy person. So to slow down is very difficult for me. Slow down in a class of 20, it's just teeth achingly tedious. But I did it, and it did me a great deal of good. But there's always this question of wanting to go deeper. And then you find you're engaging with someone else's culture. And I wanted something that was rooted in the land, and so there was a magical act. So I went to a meditation class, and various people who were in it came round to my house for cups of tea and things like this. And one day in the middle of the room, there was a form to send off for the introductory pack for OBOD. Appeared by magic. It also appeared because it fell out of someone's handbag, of course, but that doesn't stop it being magic. It came just at the right time.
That's how it happened for you, was it? It just found a form.
It just appeared in my house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you've never found out who dropped it there?
No. I wouldn't want to know because, you don't need to know these things. It's all the wonderful synchronicity of coming home to where you want to be.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I feel over many, many, many years that putting on a Druid robe is the best thing I ever did. It gave me a focus to my life. And also, it's a robe that's really big, so it can fit all your own ideas underneath it.
Yeah,
And it gave me what I was looking for, which was acceptance and allowing. Acceptance and allowing. I think that's what everyone wants, to explore and be as creative as they possibly can be in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you sent off for the I guess what would have been the intro pack at the time, and then the course. What was it about that made you kind of, like you say, feel like you'd come home? What was there that kept you there?
Yeah, I think it's what wasn't there that kept me there. So what it wasn't was prescriptive and telling me I must do things and saying that I must be things, have things, do things. And that thing in the words that always says, if it feels right to you, if you fancy doing this, if it's the right time, those things that just lead you gently through. That was very important to me. And then it didn't ask to do disgusting things, by which I mean, again, I don't want to upset anyone, but I don't do bodily fluids in my magic.
Right.
And I've read a hell of a lot about other magical systems that do use them extensively, and I'd rather keep my bodily fluids in the body, really.
Thank you very much.
And my magic on the page. So it never, I felt its approach was ethical and sound and treated me like a mature person who could make my own decisions. Yeah, and that was really.
Did you look at any other kind of path? Did you look at the Wiccan path or anything like that? Or were you specifically looking for something earth-centered? Yeah,
I was definitely looking for a nature religion.
Right. Okay. So did you have a look at Wicca and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I looked at Wicca. Yeah. So now, when I started, there weren't that many books around, but of course, Janet and Stuart Farrer had opened up the world into Wiccans, and that's what I'm talking about because they talked about drops of blood and things like that in their rituals, and that made me think I really didn't want to do that. And they also talked about spellcraft, which would affect other people. Making poppets, binding people, that sort of thing, and that's very different to. I think that OBOD is a sort of mystery system, magical mystery system, but it's not. It doesn't work in that way. The thing I love most about Druidry is that I see it as profoundly relevant as well.
Right.
Because we've got these brilliant role models from ancient times who were peace givers, who are lawmakers, who are arbiters for justice and all the things that we need in the world today. And also, OBOD always seems to have a relevant response to any crisis. That be that world crisis, personal crisis, or whatever. And you can't go sort of nearly 3 decades along a path without having quite a few personal crises, some traumatic, some happy, whatever, but they happen. And the bottom line is, does your spirituality support that?
Give the foundation to support it, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember somebody asked me years ago what Druidry was, to sum it up, and I just, all that came to mind was a path that enabled people to get to develop a closer relationship with the natural world, seen and unseen, because I make no distinction between the unseen worlds and the seen worlds as being natural. To me, they are all part of the natural world.
Yes.
And I think that's the real foundation of everything that I see Druidry to be. You know, we're so separate from the cycles of nature. You know, I heard somebody on a podcast the other day that said, you know, my Druid, well, they didn't say my Druidry, they said my paganism has nothing to do with fertility. And I just thought, well, how are you alive? And how do you stay alive? You know, and that to me, that really spoke to me and said, wow, look how separate we are. We don't even consider the food we eat and the clothes we wear to have come from any kind of fertility of the land. And I think that's what really Druidry does, is it reminds us we are just, well, no, not just, but we are part of the natural world, part of that cycle of life and death and rebirth and everything that goes with it, that is expressed through the wheel of the year. And within the Obod course, within Druidry, all of the tools are there. If you want to do some spells, you get all the tools to do it. It's whether or not, but it's not a kind of major aspect. It's not the thing that kind of like will draw people necessarily to it. The spells, if you like, to me, have always been about the change that happens inside and happens with that connection with everything else. To just think it's actually, mate, it's not all about me. Do you know?
Yes, that's right. But it gradually changes. You know, doing the studying gradually changes your internal landscape. So you have a different form of, different set of references that someone who doesn't have a spiritual path doesn't have, you know, and they are huge resources, aren't they? Whether you go down and throw something in your stream and tell it all your troubles, you know, because you're depressed, or whether you go and sing on top of a hill because you're, you know, thrilled to bits, you know. It's that idea, the more you study the natural world and realize we are the natural world, the more you realize that all life is sentient. It's up to us. It seems to be the rule that we have to communicate with it. We've got voices. Why wouldn't we communicate, you know? And as soon as we start doing that, the world responds as if we're right. As if, at last you've got the handle of it. Hey, you joined the party. Well done. Yeah. Now keep doing it.
Yeah, that's it. That's why, like, when you're doing an initiation, I remember at an Obod camp, we were down by the Willows and we were doing an initiation night at an Obod camp. And we were holding this ceremony. It was a beautiful, might have even been a full moon or something. It was just around Lunar time, I remember it being. And you're standing there in a circle, and between a couple of people, an owl just flew into the circle and just landed on a tree branch right overhanging the circle. Yeah. And it's almost like things like that happen so often that it can't be coincidence. And it's almost like you say, nature, the spirits of nature turn around and say, I see you. You know, I see you and I hear you, you know, and you're speaking the same language as us. And I love that. Have you...
Gives you a shiver, doesn't it?
It does. And it's things like that. I was going to say just now, actually, you know, 27 years. I don't know what year you joined Obod, but we met in 95, which is numbers of years ago now.
Yeah.
But you know, to keep people on their path, things have to happen to keep connection going, don't they? And so do you have any kind of like memories and things that have kind of made you go, yes, I'm on the right path, you know, as you walk along here, any kind of peak experiences or anything like that you are willing to share to 15,000 people listening to this show?
Yes. Yeah. Many peak experiences. I remember being in the middle of a city and suddenly being transfixed by this golden leaf tree. And I was practically crying as I saw it. It's just a culmination of lots of things coming together in the shape of this tree. And I actually had to sit down on a bench and sort of compose myself after it. But the main thing is not huge peak experiences, because life isn't made up of huge peaks, and as it's not made up of huge traumas, please God. But please the gods, I'm sorry. Apologies to the rest of you. I was thinking of my particular friends there. But what it's made up is a load of tiny little incremental things, one after the other, The fact that there might be a kestrel out in this tree while we're talking to each other, you know, the fact that when I go out, if I'm tuned in, that's the other thing about the owl. The world's waiting for us to join in. You have to be tuned in to notice the owl. It doesn't often fly between people. Usually they're just there. And it's up to us to slow down and start noticing. And there's a lot we'll talk about my book in a minute, which is fantastic.
Yes, we will.
Because it's got a load of hints about how to be fascinated, how to keep that fascination, how to keep everything fresh and moving. Because, it's pouring with rain this morning. We all want to sit and read in bed for an extra hour and not get up. That's called being lazy and being human. But the fact is, then a bird whizzes past and you think, oh, yeah, I want to be in the day as well. And you just get up. It's the natural world is a constant prompt, I think.
Yeah. So you joined the order, and at some point, I think you took over from me as Touchstone editor, if I remember rightly. And that was a while ago now.
Yep.
How many years have you been doing that now?
I started in September 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it?
That is a long time. And hats off to you, Penny, because touched wood. you haven't missed an issue at all, even during all of the COVID thing. It was still delivered. It was still went out the door. Just fantastic. So, my hats off to you.
Well, thank you very much
for doing that.
But it's really interesting, isn't it? I've noticed with my daughter and loads of children that you don't have a job for life now, and you don't have a 9-to-5 routine. You don't have and this is all good. This all allows them to become newly creative and reinvent themselves and find interesting things to do. But there is something to be said for having a contract and doing something. And especially actually when you're depressed or when you're fed up or when things aren't going well, to actually sit down and do some external work for an hour is just a little touching with the real world of contracts and agreements and keeping things going that I find can be very therapeutic. And thank goodness I've got a nice life. So usually I have to drag myself to the computer like any sane person. But but the main thing about Touchstone is that the privilege of doing it, because this is a grassroots involvement from the newest bod. The number of people who write and say, I've only been in the order a few months. They read 3 Touchstones, then they're writing for it. Yeah. Because they feel somehow we've made them feel their opinion is valued and as valid as someone who's been 30 years in the order, as indeed it is. Because the only difference between us is we've been here longer. So therefore, we have done more reading and studying. That doesn't mean that the newest bard might not be more in tune, more psychic, more gifted, more intelligent, have more life experience than any of us.
Yeah, and that's that enthusiasm as well that you know of discovering and go, oh my God, I'm home. That goes. I love being around that at the gatherings when But
OBOD isn't threatened by the people in OBOD aren't threatened by any of this. We want everyone. It's we say a Druid situation is a win-win situation. We want everyone to flower.
Yes.
And Touchstone gives them a platform for it. I'm going to give you an advert for Touchstone. I'm going to give you a couple of spoilers because I wrote these down. Next month, for example, we've got the power of, last month we had I Am a Mushroom. Why wouldn't you want to read that article? Of course we're all mushrooms. We're all connected. We are,
the mycelium network.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. But this month we've got online ritual. What's more relevant to that than at the moment? How to make it better. We've got Celtic figures as ecstatic trance postures. So I don't know whether when you last sat in the position of the man in the Gunderstrap cauldron, Dave. In fact, oh God, you're doing it now. Oh, that's clever.
Of course, I'll just go and grab my snake.
Yes. Then we've got a listening circle for resilience in troubled times, this sort of thing. If you're talking about keeping the ideas fresh and new, what better way than to read articles from different minds every month.
Yeah,
I get ideas every month from the people who write.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think part of the thing that happened with the pandemic is I know a lot of people who for whatever reason felt like they were losing touch with their path. Maybe they'd put all of their eggs into a group or something like that, and suddenly the group couldn't make it and they couldn't meet. So they were thinking, well, what is my druidry, or what is my path to me now if the coven or the grove can no longer meet up? Yeah. And that kind of existential threat of this thing out there and all that stuff that was pushing people's buttons. And of course, a lot of the time when you're busy trying to keep things together like that, the first thing that goes, weirdly enough, is your spirituality, is your spiritual connection, because you're so busy doing that you forget that actually to take some time to be. And I think things like, having Touchstone every month and just taking that time to sit down and read and connect with other members around the world through that journal, I think must help people keep in touch with their path, without a doubt. For me, I had a daily practice that I'd let go just before the pandemic. That I took up again, and it was that practice every single morning that reminded me that actually, even though I can't go anywhere, I'm still connected with everything,
Yes.
And
it puts the whole thing in a wider context. The spiritual context is much wider than the physical context, and it's really helpful. I understand about people and their communities and their groups, but one of the big shifts in Druidry is getting away from a human-centric thing. And so many people didn't want to seem insensitive, but actually loved the lockdown when they got used to it, because it allowed them to be in nature and that sort of thing. I think it advanced people's understanding of nature as a support.
Very much so.
And took a load of human pressure off them. Humans are exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yes,
it's exhausting being a human, isn't it? I mean, we'll have a cup of tea after this conversation because we've had fun chatting and we're tired, so we need a cup of tea, You don't feel like that when you've been chatting to an oak tree or just sitting under it for
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I was, before the lockdown, I have to say I was heading towards another burnout, to be honest with you. All of my druidry for years have been completely outward facing, organising the gatherings, the groves, the longman rituals, the gigs, the talks. And then the lockdown came along.
Yeah.
And of course, that all went. And I thought, wow, what do I actually believe now?
Yeah.
And actually it's given me a beautiful moment. And it is weird to talk about the pandemic as a beautiful moment, but, it gave me the space to think and really reconnect with what I felt as a human being, as a part of nature. All right. Yeah. Enough of me, though.
Well, I was going to say that all the admin and the organisation of something that is the Druid being of service.
Yes,
but like you say, it's outwards. But you've got to factor into the equation the fact that you're a mad musician as well. But we won't go there. It really doesn't help. I live with one. I know this.
Now I'll get onto your new book in a minute, but I know that you wrote a book called Keys to the Temple, which was about Dion Fortune. So you must also, along with the kind of nature spirituality and the work with the guides and that kind of thing, you must have had an interest in some kind of ceremonial stuff as well, and the roots of Dion Fortune. So where did that come from with your interest in her?
Well, that's really interesting because she was a formative influence, and actually I've just written a blog where I credit her as being my teacher, my mentor, although she died years before I was even born. But yes, I had an interesting experience where I thought, they say, this is before I came to Obod, when the student's ready, the teacher arrives.
Yes.
What? How many people have been frustrated by that little phrase? Think, actually, look, world, I'm ready now. Yes, I really am. And then I realised that actually my teacher was talking to me through books, not one-to-one. Philip had Nguyen, I had Dion Fortune. That was interesting. And then, of course, the mentors of Obod. I mean, think Philip as the genius of the course. I would say that he is my mentor as well. I've got another teacher who I co-wrote the book with, actually, Ian Rees. But the Dion Fortune thing came when there was a load of cheap paperbacks of her fiction came out, and they were half price in the local post office in 1974. And someone bought 3 and said, "Here, Penny, you'll enjoy these."
Ah.
And I was knocked out by them. I found out years later that she'd written them to be possibly initiatory experiences for the reader. And that started me on thinking seriously about a magical path. This is the time when I was doing Tai Chi and things like that. It made me think seriously about magic. Everything I read about magic, like the things I read about witchcraft, I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go down in a basement and wave a sword about. I didn't want to make shapes and invite demons. I didn't want to do any of this stuff, but it fascinated me, and I've read ever such a lot about it. Then when I read Dion Fortune's nonfiction, I thought, hello, this is ethical, sound, commonsensical, not scary, treats you like a mature person. I thought, hey ho. So I've got Dion Fortune and I've got Druidry. Yeah. And I've sort of melded the two in a way that all those ideas have. Yeah. That's how I express my Druidry out. And it's interesting that when she died, Dion Fortune was actually working on what's called the Arthurian formula, which was, particularly to use the currents of myth and legend that have come about in these lands.
Yeah.
And use them as a magical formula to protect Britain during the Second World War. So that was quite interesting. The fact that, because of course Wiccans and magicians and all sorts of people all played their esoteric part in the world wars, as well as their practical part as well. Dion Fortune was actually bombed. 3 Queensberry Terrace, or one of her houses along Queensberry Terrace was bombed, and she wrote a letter saying she'd often been accused of being a black magician in the past, and on this occasion it was completely true, because the ceiling had fallen down on them and they were all black with dust.
So literally.
Yeah.
Well, I love those novels as well, and as you read them, there's something incredibly bardic about it, isn't it? Because those novels, they're not kind of like, do this to get this effect, do this to feel this, do this. It's told in story, and that is an incredibly bardic way. It's like Taliesin's poems and all those things that we've inherited. They're not literal, and they're open to interpretation, and that gives them a sense of journey as well, which is just so beautiful. And the book Keys to the Temple has just been reprinted. That's right, yeah?
Yes, that's right. That's been reprinted by Aeon Books, and if you go to my Facebook page, I've got a code which gives you something like 20% off until the end of April.
Oh, okay.
So that's quite a useful thing to have.
Okay, I'll pop a link to that Facebook page in the show notes so people can find that. Now,
thank you.
You've just finished a book. It's going to be published very shortly by Llewellyn, and it's just got the best title of a book I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
9 Ways to Charm a Dryad.
Well,
so tell me a bit about this book and the journey for this book, Penny.
Right. Well, I've written some big books. I've got my big book on Druidry and this sort of thing. And I just wanted something lighter and accessible and full of pretty pictures and buzzwords and different fonts and stuff that would encourage people to flit and sip and just keep their fascination with the world. So it's called A Magical Adventure to Connect with the Spirit of Trees.
Sounds lovely.
Someone proofed an early copy and said, do you realise I read to page 43 and you haven't actually told me what a dryad is yet? So I corrected that. That went into the introduction. One becomes, it's called transparent head syndrome, because you know it, you think everyone else does. So the idea is that life is pretty crude and brutal these days in some places. I mean, we seem to be getting ruder and less pleasant to people. And I think charm, we need a major charm offensive, and start with our relationship with the trees.
Yeah.
we don't only choose. It's all about not being human-centric. This is a two-way process with any sentient life form. Why on earth would a tree want to be friends with us? Why would a dryad want to bother with us? Look at us scurrying around, they're just standing there, open mouthed, wondering what we're doing. So
they're busy being trees. They're doing tree things. They're not waiting for us to sit by them, are they?
That's right. Yes.
Finally you're here. Okay.
Yeah. But to connect with any other sentient life form, I think we have to mirror it. And I think we have to try and reflect the things that are important to it. I think we have to slow down. That's the main thing. And so I'll just read you some of the chapter headings, the charms. So the idea is that when you're charming, you charm people. Charming meaning attracting them and also magicking them. You cast a spell over them, sort of thing, as beautiful trees do over us. So I've got the charm of fascination and acclimatizing, the charm of true appreciation. So not thinking, oh yeah, there's a green blob on top of that brown trunk, but actually knowing about particularly appreciating things for what they are. No one wants, you don't want anyone to say, oh yeah, I know Dave is that blonde guy with glasses. You're Dave, for goodness sake. And, an olive tree is an olive tree and a linden tree is a linden tree, and they are really different. So the charm of lineage is all about trees in history, and getting into a right relationship is about changing our perspective. Healing, then the charm of Arcadian dreaming is getting back to the first worlds with Pan and the Dryads and that mystical, mythological cusp at the beginning of our understanding. And the last one is the charm. I'm missing one out, just to be a teaser. Charm 9 is the charm of wild creativity, because I think the trees encourage us to be wild. They do not judge us. And I think we're all too timid with our creativity. We want to do things well. We're brought up in a judgmental world that says, it's fine when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, whoever hears a 30-year-old playing the recorder badly, not very often. If you can't do it well, you don't do it anymore. But just to be wild and just think, I'm going to make a pig's ear of this and it's glorious, it's quite something, I think. I think there's not enough of that done in the privacy of our own back gardens, in our own parks, in our own whatever. People actually forgive a lot. It's like them not noticing ours. They don't even notice us. No one's looking at us.
No. It's the thing to do it for yourself. That's the thing. It's an expression of your inner soul, and it's not about approval from other people. That's where the Awen comes from, isn't it? The blessing of the Awen comes from, that idea of whatever I create must come from me and my honesty, my integrity, and be congruous with my life, and that's it. And that's all that matters.
Yes,
it is actually all that matters.
It is, but it's a particular sort of connection. I've just written about this in my latest MailChimp thing, and I got it from Caitlin Matthews. And that's that we have a horizontal plane, and we live on a horizontal plane and a vertical axis. And of course, we're plugged into the horizontal all the time, reaching out to other people and to the world and the World Wide Web. All this is horizontal and sort of pulling us out. And what we don't do often enough, and what the practicum in the Gurs and everything helps us to do at least once a week, is to pull back and connect to that vertical plane that says me, the depths, the heights. This is where I am. There's Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and the pole star above me. There's the inner fire of the earth beneath me. And there's the fire in my heart in between the two. And, I am the connection. I am the tree. I am the bridge between those two.
Yeah, that moment of just stepping out in your garden and looking up and seeing the stars, and just for a moment thinking of yourself on this tiny little disc, this tiny little sphere with all of that out there, and suddenly you get it. Where you're at. It's a good leveler.
Yeah, it's a double thing. It's a Druid paradox thing, isn't it? Because first of all, it puts you in your proper place. It's a great leveler, but also it doesn't make you feel small.
No.
It makes you feel incredibly joyous. Maybe that's because our job is to be witnesses. Maybe the earth needs us to witness its myriad wonders. I don't know, but it doesn't make us feel small and insignificant or ashamed of our petty. It just makes us feel joined up and part of a glorious whole.
That's right. When you stand on something, there's this idea you're separate from it. But actually, when you look up and see the stars and you see the moon, and then you think about the sun and the earth beneath you, you're contained within it. You're not standing on it. You're part of it. You're contained within it. And then that changes the whole relationship, doesn't it? Fantastic. Yeah. So... Oh, we've gone deep today.
Oh yes, yeah.
So when is this book available, and when can people buy it? You got a date yet?
In the US, it should be out already. It's out on Kindle already. I think for the paper copy in the UK, it will be April.
In April, okay. Thank you so much for taking the time, Penny. It's been lovely. I think we've been talking about 40 minutes, which is perfect. All right then. Well, thank you for being with us, and for your friendship over the years, Penny, as well. It's been wonderful to walk this path with you and Arthur, and hopefully one day we'll be soon sitting in a field or something. Well, I know in June we'll be hearing Arthur's dulcet tones and yours as well, I'm sure.
And yours,
and mine,
God, it's going to be good to get back together, isn't it?
It's going to be emotional. It really will. Anyway, thank you very much, Penny.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Cheers.
Breathe in deeply, all you see in the temple of the trees, singing circle, wind and leaves, loving everything. In the temple of the trees, apple blossoms falling down. Join the goddess, here sing, loving everything. Temple of the trees, night birds drifting on the breeze, shadow dancing of the she, loving everything.
Breathing out, breathing in, air come dance on my skin, lifting, changing, moving, filling, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, air come dance upon my skin, lifting, changing, moving, filling, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, air come dance on my skin, lifting, changing, moving, filling, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in.
I absolutely loved talking with Penny, and as she says, the new book is available in the USA right now and will be available everywhere else on the 8th of April. After the interview, you heard Temple of the Trees from the new album from guitar maestro Brian Henke called To the Fair, and you also heard Breathing Out from the new album Enchantica from Virginia Ackley. Thank you for taking the time to send in those songs for the show and keep the music and the Arwen flowing. Well, that is nearly it for episode 179, but before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a beautiful handcrafted ceramic cauldron donated to the show by Jennifer Lombard from Earth and Ether. And the question I asked was, during the interview, we talked about a standing stone that Brighton and Hove Albion's old stadium was named after. What is the name of that monolith that still stands in Hove Park? Well, the answer is the Goldstone. And the first name drawn from the hat and winner of that lovely cauldron is Cliff Stefanu from London, UK. Congratulations, Cliff. That cauldron will be with you very soon. The prize this month is a copy of Penny's brand new book. Yes, we have pre-ordered a copy for you called 9 Ways to Charm a Dryad. And the question I'd like you to answer is, in the interview, Penny said her teacher was a famous author and occultist. What is her name? In the interview, Penny said her teacher was a famous occultist and author. What is her name? Email your answer to podcast@druidry.org and one of you will win that fantastic new book. And I haven't said this for a while, so a little reminder that we do not store your personal details after the prize has been sent. I only ask for them so I don't have to chase people around the internet to find the address of where to send the prize. Once the prize has been sent, I delete all of your details. So my friends, that is a show. I'm going to head out to the beach now with Oscar the dog and enjoy the spring sunshine. Have a great month. I will see you back here in April for episode 180. But until then, I wish you all peace and blessed be. Goodbye.